Hey everybody, what's up? My name is Locke Vincent and welcome back to Gaming Alchemy. I know it's been a while, but trust me, this one's worth it. We're going to be talking about Bloodborne this week. Yes, the spiritual successor to the Souls series, and developed by From Software, published by Japan Studio, with the man behind it, Hidetaka Miyazaki, the man, the myth, the legend. Really excited to be talking about this game because, as you should know, I love the series. And it's gotten, you could say, better and better over time. More refined is a better way to put it. But Bloodborne is definitely a refinement. It's not a huge departure from the series. It's more of a spiritual successor, of course. They've changed some things, but they've also kept a lot the same. So let's get started. We're going to break down into two different games. And let's check out what the first game is that we're going to break Bloodborne down into. Here we go. All right, so the first game that Bloodborne breaks down into is Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Now I picked Castlevania Lords of Shadow, you'll see in a second, but it's really important to gravitate away from the older Castlevanias that we've seen, in the NES and Super NES days. So Bloodborne shares a very similar theme in the sense that Castlevania Gothic nature, it's been rooted in that over the years. And Castlevania does this very well. Vampires, werewolves, holy fight against, the evil curses. Anyways, Bloodborne shares this, and the similarities are pretty uncanny in the sense that Bloodborne has moved away from fantasy, and I love that. I love that it is no longer dragons and castles. It's now, cathedrals and these crazy towns with people going to, on a werewolf hunt. So I really like that departure. Next up, we've got the combat, and that's why I actually had to go with a 3D Castlevania, one of the better ones, Lords of Shadow, where the combat is very fast-paced. Now, you have to keep in mind that Bloodborne does not use shields. Now, this is a huge, huge transition from the previous games in the series. Bloodborne replaces shields with firearms, and I think this is really important because it changes the pace of the combat so well, and it amps it up. And the battles are faster, you're getting more dodges in, more attacks, and it just gives you that sense of accomplishment. So I love that they have changed the combat. That is one of the most drastic changes that we've seen in this game. And finally, the combat, to sort of take it a step further, they've changed the weaponry to go from just basic sword and shield to these really cool, almost steampunkish trick weapons where if you looked at Castlevania, you remember the combat cross. It could sort of transform from a cross into a whip. Now, move that over to Bloodborne, and you have these, you have a saw spear, you've got an axe, you've got your regular sword, but these also transform into bigger and better weapons, and it changes from your one-handed weapon usually into your two-handed weapon. So you've got your Kirk hammer, which is a short sword. Transform it, trick it out, becomes a giant hammer. If you got your axe, it's a one-handed axe. Kick it down, trick it out, it's a two-handed axe. And it's really cool because it elaborates so much on the combat that you are able to do those trick transformations in the middle of your combos, and it opens up the combat so much more. So between the shields being removed in the place, using firearms instead, and those trick combos, it's elevated the combat of Bloodborne so much, and I really think that's really cool. So it's funny to see, those similarities in Castlevania. Of course, I'll throw this last one in, which is the shortcuts. Castlevania, very popular and very memorable for the gear gating, where you can't pass a barrier until you have a certain item or weapon. Of course, Bloodborne doesn't do this, but we all know that you've got the shortcuts. Finish a boss, get to a new area, roundabout, take that elevator, kick open a door, you're back to familiar territory. It's such a great feeling, and I can't stress enough how well this is realized in Bloodborne. So that's how Bloodborne breaks down to Castlevania. We've got the Gothic nature, we've got those combat tactics and techniques, and finally the shortcuts. So let's change gears here. We'll swap over to the second game that we're going to break Bloodborne down into. Here we go. All right, so the second game that I'm going to break Bloodborne down into is a unique choice, and it's Call of Cthulhu: Dark Corners of the Earth. This game is a adventure, sort of action survival horror game, kind of a mishmash where you're a detective, you get trapped in this really weird town with really weird characters trying to uncover this mystery, and it's, rich in Lovecraftian horror. Flip it over, look at Bloodborne, and on the surface, you think, you know, it's got some gothic undertones, as we mentioned in Castlevania. It's got some werewolves, that sort of thing. But really, as you peel back the layers, it's important to see that you've got this Lovecraftian theme and vibe throughout. And it's really cool because you don't see that on the surface. I think it's really interesting that they've gone in that direction, because I think Lovecraftian themes they've been underdone. They haven't been utilized very well, even though it's some of the coolest storytelling and some of the coolest sort of themes that you can use with these just really dark tones, but also these big, giant, fantastical monsters coming to ruin the earth. And I'm not spoiling anything with Bloodborne, it's just that is apparent as you go through the game, and it gets better and better. It's got this insight system where as you build insight, you're realizing, you're seeing, you know, you don't have humanity in Bloodborne, you have insight. And as your insight meter goes up, you're seeing different things and perceiving the world differently. And I think that's really important for this game. It's a cool change. Next up, Call of Cthulhu. It explains its story through its environment. And the environment includes your items, it includes dialogue with other characters, and just the surrounding area around you. I can't stress this enough and how important this is for Bloodborne. Bloodborne just doesn't blatantly tell you its story. The storytelling comes from the environment, and it shares this with Call of Cthulhu. It's all about reading those item descriptions, getting into those details, and really exploring the characters and the dialogue with the few people that you do meet. It's rich in just storytelling. You just have to uncover it, and I like that, because every other game just hits you over the head with story, and I think it's unique to this series. I know that, you know, Dark Souls and Demon Souls did this as well, but Bloodborne definitely takes it a step further with this cool Lovecraftian horror, but also just the amount of things you can discover is really, it's almost insurmountable. It's cool. You can't do it in one playthrough, which is awesome. Finally, of course, you know, it wouldn't be complete without talking about the boss fights. And even though Call of Cthulhu doesn't have big, grandiose boss fights, it's all about the eldritch horrors, those elder gods. It's, you know, the ever-looming presence of Cthulhu. And I think it's important to note in Bloodborne how it shares this similarity with the boss fights. And even though it's such a mechanical and technical thing, the boss fights are really cool, because it's just fantastical how great these boss fights are. And it starts out, you know, you might fight, you know, some bipedal guy who might transform into a werewolf, but then towards the end of the game, you might be fighting an elder god. I don't know. It's really cool, and I can't stress how awesome the boss fights are, even though at times they can be frustrating. Don't be afraid to summon friends. You know, Bloodborne is definitely served best with a co-op experience. It's really fun, the system they're using in there. And play with strangers, play with buddies, it's all in the mix. So that's what we got. Similarities between Bloodborne and Call of Cthulhu. It's really interesting to see what they've done with the story in Bloodborne and how that's portrayed. So let's wrap things up, take it to the outro. I hope you'll follow me there. Let's go. All right, so we've got Bloodborne, definitely a spiritual successor to the Souls series, as I said, but sharing similarities with Castlevania in the gothic nature, the combat and trick weapons, and obviously the backtracking. Flip it over, we've got Bloodborne sharing similarities with Call of Cthulhu, Dark Corners of the Earth, gaining influence from obviously the Lovecraftian themes, the horror, the storytelling in that, and also the boss fights. Bring that all together, mix it in one batch, and you've got Bloodborne. I'm really enjoying the game. I think it's really awesome to play. It's fun. The combat changes, I think, is the most important thing that they've done to the series. And obviously, it's an awesome world to explore. So get into there, go explore Bloodborne, and just be warned, it's hard as hell. It's not an easy game, and you should expect that from this series by now. So that's my breakdown for Bloodborne. Check it out, have some fun, and we'll catch you guys for the next show. All right, so if you like that breakdown, be sure to go over to Gaming Alchemy and check out some other stuff we're doing. We've got reviews, we've got podcasts, we've got tons of cool stuff happening. Click those links, you can subscribe, do all that social media stuff, but if you want some more, click over there. Check it out, it's right there, one of those 2 videos. Just grab them. Grab them, it's fun. Keep going. They're gonna stay there until the video stops, so Probably want to do something with those.